Hi, I'm Jason, and I'm the host of this educational YouTube channel called Citizens of Earth. I'm a researcher, a scientist, and a father of four. Citizens of Earth is an educational organization that produces on-demand, science-driven courses for the most important skills in life. Today, we're talking to one of my three favorite sisters, Heather. Her day-to-day job and her passion is being a nurse in the ER. She was formerly a firefighter. Heather was a single mom for a very long time and is now a grandmother. That makes me a grand uncle, I guess. She might not know this, but I respect and love her deeply. Seriously, she's an inspiration to me, and that's why I'm talking to her today. It was an absolute pleasure to get to know her a little better. After watching this, I hope you'll see how everyday people like my sister are amazing. In this episode, we cover a lot of ground. We discuss tattoos, what it's like to be a nurse in the ER, coping with death, coping with trauma, having a growth mindset, how skepticism is a skill that can mean the difference between life and death, resilience, getting scammed, creating a legacy, personal values, and more. Stick around to the end to hear Warbird's interview with my sister. You won't want to miss that. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did.
Yes, it looks like you have some new tattoos since I saw you last time.
Uh,
Like this mandala thing on your arm.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome.
Thank you. It actually, for a long time, I was trying to figure out how to get my firefighter emblem
Oh yeah, okay.
and not have it look super manly. And so I was like, oh, it's pretty symmetrical. I'll have a mandala put around it. And that's what I did.
Great
Yeah.
idea. It looks good.
Thank you. Thank you. The only thing I think I want to do is I might add some color to it specifically so it pops out a little bit more.
Oh yeah.
So yeah.
Well, I mean, black and white looks good also.
And I was thinking, I think I actually got, I got a snake added to the back of my arm too. I don't know if you,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. Nice.
Yeah. And so, yeah.
Well, I guess we have similar themes in tattoos, kind of like, well, I don't have any patterns, but I do like animals and yeah, that kind of a thing.
Cool.
Yeah. I did not plan this, but mine tend to be water animals so far, except for the raven on my back, but all the rest of them are, yeah.
Actually, that's funny because ravens, I've always loved ravens. I think they're really freaking cool. But until one was eating one of our chickens last year, and then I was like,
They ate chicken?
oh yeah. But they were like young chickens. And so it was opportunity, and the raven was bigger than the chicken, and it killed the chicken and took off with it. I was like, no, oh my gosh, what just happened?
I didn't know they do that. I know they eat meat, but I thought they like to eat dead things. I'm certainly not an expert.
The chicken eventually was dead.
Yeah, that's fair, right? If it ain't dead at first, you can make it dead. Will you tell me what a day-to-day is like at your work?
No day is ever the same, which that's something that's the same every day. So, well, let's see. Actually, it depends on my shift, really. The shift, like if it's a day shift, it starts off kind of slow, get into the ER, and you kind of never know what you're walking into. And you just...
Oh, sorry. So I have to remember that people are going to be watching this and they don't know what you do. So, or potentially be watching this. And so you are a nurse in the ER.
Yes.
In what hospital?
In a Providence hospital in Centralia.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. So every day is different. Yeah. And that's the only thing you can count on so far.
Pretty much. And I can always count on people being sick. It's honestly, it's a pretty even-ish mixture between like mental health coming in to get mental health, because usually we're the first line. They have to get medically cleared to go where they're going. Or they are not safe for themselves or others, like immediately not safe for themselves or others. So they have to have a safe place. And so not that we lock them up or anything, but the ER is definitely not a mental health facility. So we put them in a room that is safe, kind of. I mean, it's not like a padded room or anything, but safe enough. And somebody's watching them so they can't hurt themselves. We make, stop that or whatever. And then you can always count on like people having medical health issues like heart attacks and all of that, or traumas.
Yeah.
That's got to be my favorite part, is the traumas.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
Shit, that sounds intense. I mean, I shouldn't be surprised because it's the ER, but like, yeah, I mean, some people have an idea of what an ER is. I suppose there are lots of people who work at ERs, so maybe they have friends or relatives who work there and they have stories. But the thing that was kind of the thing that's new to me today is the mental health stuff. So yeah, so people come in there of their own volition, like they drive in, or do people get brought in? I'm thinking, I'm curious about the mental health cases specifically, those people.
So it's kind of a combination, really. A couple of years ago, the emergency department was classified as quote unquote a safe place.
Okay.
So you can drop off babies. I say unwanted babies, but babies that need a safer place to go as determined by whomever, and mental health. And so if somebody is like a danger to society or a danger to themselves, like immediately a danger to themselves, then law can bring them in, ambulance service can bring them in, or they can bring themselves in. And then we attempt to either continue whatever medications they're on, or we just make sure somebody's watching them so they can't hurt themselves until an actual mental health provider can come do their them. Yep.
Do y'all have security there? Like when somebody comes in and that kind of a state, it seems like they'd be pretty unpredictable in terms of violence themselves.
Yeah.
People.
They're very unpredictable. And at our hospital, yes, we do have security. They can get hands-on, which that sounds funny to mention, but like I had an interview today with a different place and their security's not hands-on, which
then what are they there for?
right. I kind of had to ask the same thing. But I mean, as a blockade, kind of, they get in between the patient and the staff. They can escort the patient off the premises. I mean, really, if it's somebody that we can't keep safe or safe from themselves, then we end up having to call law, and then law will have to bring them somewhere else. Yeah, so that was pretty interesting to me because at the facility I'm at right now, we can restrain patients. We don't like to. To be honest, there's a lot of documentation and it doesn't help anybody, except in the very meantime, it might keep them safe for a second.
So how do you feel about this job? Is it a paycheck or what? Yeah, what do you feel about
Well, it? I mean, I wanted to be a nurse for 20 years, so I love it. But
right on.
Yeah, so I was just telling somebody else that because what we were talking about, the wanting to be at work and wanting to be at home. I was like, I love being home, but I literally have always wanted to be a nurse.
Yeah.
And it took me 20 years to finally be like, I just got to go back to school and get this done. And so I think I have that appreciation for it too, that even on the hard days, I'm like, I wanted this. I knew what I was getting into and I wanted this. I love it. I love that I can do things that a lot of people can't. A lot of people don't have the stomach to do a lot of the things that are needed. And being able to, I'm like, well, I feel almost obligated to. So yeah, it's very fulfilling.
You mentioned many people might not have the stomach to do some things. Like what do you mean by that? Can you elaborate?
The grossest stuff is the mundane pooping and peeing stuff, which is just disgusting. And I can't say I can always stomach that, but the stuff that I like really is like traumas. Recently there was, and this is pretty gross, it's not like this is the part I enjoy, but being able to do it. Recently we had somebody, the story's a little unclear, but fell asleep on railroad tracks.
Oh dear. Oh dear.
And it didn't end very well. But but the person didn't die either.
Okay.
And so, being able to attempt to help with that and stabilize. And
Wow. Now that, okay.
yeah.
That sounds, I can't, I'm having trouble finding words for it, but it seems like you seem pretty solid in retrospect. Like, I don't know how I would handle that kind of a situation specifically, but in the past, I know that I've been, and we're similar in this respect. I think if you're in a sticky situation, I'm the person you want to have there with you, because I'll never panic. So
Yeah.
you are similar?
Yeah. And that is one thing I've noticed in myself, and other people have kind of complimented on, that it's when stuff is going crazy in my head, I'm like, this isn't helping. Calm down, think about the situation, figure out what you need to do next, and do it, because the situation isn't going to go away, but you can change the way that you react to it. So yeah.
Respect. You mentioned your passion. Do you think nursing is your passion?
I would say emergency medical, because I really loved being a firefighter as well.
Okay.
I think I have more opportunity as a nurse to be able to do a lot more things. What is it? We have a lot more autonomy, where we're able to like make a decision and do it. We don't necessarily have to have permission from somebody else to do certain things. And so we are the ones actually making decisions. And some of them seem like simple decisions. If you're in the field, like somebody's bleeding, you put pressure on, make it stop. Staying calm helps most people, not everybody, but helps most people, so I would definitely say the emergency medical is definitely a passion. Yeah.
It sounds like you find it to be very satisfying or fulfilling, or both.
Yeah, most of the time, yes. A lot of the time it really drags you down and is very traumatizing to us, but yeah.
What do you mean it drags you down?
Nobody wants to be in the ER. Nobody wants to be there. So nobody's going to be like, hi, I'm so happy to be here. Sometimes you get a thank you, but really it's a very thankless job. And a lot of the times you help people pass. It's not always about saving lives. It's about making somebody comfortable before they pass, which might not be a planned outcome. And so that's really hard seeing that. And, and it's not always an older person. Sometimes it's a younger person. So it's honestly, I feel like looking at it, it's really traumatizing. But to some extent, I think for me, I'm like, I was traumatized a long time ago, and that trauma doesn't go away. So, I still get the satisfaction from helping.
How do you deal with that? I mean, that sounds pretty intense. It sounds like really interesting, but really hard to do day to day. How do you cope with that stuff?
One thing is I have given myself like a timeline, kind of. I continue to try to step back and look at the situation and be like, am I still coping? Am I still able to cope? And in my head, that helps me cope as well. Like knowing that I don't have to do this. That's a cool thing about nursing. You can really do a lot of things. You don't have to be emergency medicine, And so, just looking at it, I'm like, yep, I can still do this. Yep, I feel good about it. But honestly, at home, my home life is a huge coping mechanism. My boyfriend and I, we have talked about home life being as little stress as possible, and very zen-like. It's quiet, it's calm. We give each other like a set time to be able to vent about work, and that's it. And then kind of like a little farm life, and we live in the woods, which is helpful for, I love being outdoors. So that's a coping. And then our animals, though they can cause a lot of stress too, it's also a coping mechanism.
So it sounds like you set a little time aside to vent a little bit, but you put a cap on that so you don't, say, like, for example, go down a negative feedback loop and just keep complaining about the same thing over and over, and then you live somewhere that's quiet and away from trauma so you can find your peace there. Those are a few of your coping mechanisms?
Yeah. And I mean, as funny as this might sound, one of my coping mechanisms is knowing that the skills I learn at work, I can use in my own life if I had to. And knowing that it's actually useful for the people around me, or it could potentially be, because one of my biggest things is I feel the need to be useful, in one way or another, like to the people around me. If somebody gets hurt, I'm able to help stabilize them until they get to the hospital, or well, I mean, being a grandma, I was able to help Michaela through like labor and delivery, and keep her
Oh, you
calm.
did that? That's awesome. Spectacular. I didn't know that.
Mhm.
I think the skills you have are pretty impressive. I'm not going to name any names, but a person I know who might watch this, I was talking to yesterday, and they said they didn't know how to change their oil. And each of us have our own skills. I worked in a mechanics shop a long time ago, so I know how to do all that. I did lots of oil changes. But somebody who can say, put on a tourniquet or give somebody a splint if you're in a bad situation, that's
Mhm.
pretty impressive. And also keep a cool head. The reason I say that is I guess I admire that. You said you've been doing, or you had been wanting to be a nurse for like 20 years. Did you know somebody who was a nurse, or somebody that you looked up to? Who's your role model growing up? Yeah.
It's funny how often that question gets brought up, and so honestly, how often I've thought about that question and never come up with a good answer. So I've thought about that question a lot, actually, and it's so hard to come up with an individual person. And yes, so there's like quite a few people that I knew that were like nurses, or our grandma, for instance, was an LPN. And but honestly, I don't know if I really applied her job, her role as
Yeah.
a LPN to her ever as a kid. So I'm not sure if that's why, but I do always remember like when one of us would get hurt or injured or whatever, I was always like, oh my gosh, this is really cool. And knowing that there was somebody around that could potentially fix it always put me at ease, no matter who that person happened to be. And I was like, wow, I think I could be that person,
Yeah.
and so, yeah.
So it wasn't necessarily, you didn't have a person who was a role model necessarily, but there was a role, or like a archetype, for lack of a better word, that you
Yeah.
wanted to aspire to.
Yeah.
I would say that's kind of the definition of resilience: being able to go and experience this trauma and then have coping skills for it. How important is resilience to you?
I think it is huge. I think it's huge, honestly. Almost makes a person who they are, how resilient they are, because I mean, unless you just have a super easy life, and some people do, but also even then it's how you look at it. A super resilient person, their life might seem super easy, but it might not be. It's only because they're just resilient and able to like pick themselves back up. And so, but I think it's huge.
Do you consider yourself resilient?
I do. I think I always have room for improvement. I think there's so much like growing I can do emotionally, because even though I say I have all these coping skills, there's so many things I hold in, and I notice it. Like if I go hiking, for instance, sometimes it's a mental release where I'm like, wow, how long have I been holding that in?
Interesting.
And
Yeah.
I think part of like resilience is learning how to let go of things, learning how to let go of things and learn from things. And I think I could definitely improve my resilience.
The resilience that you do have, where did you learn that?
Yeah, I don't know. It's really, I think there's so many people I've seen just around. And I think, wow, that person is, they've got so much going for them. And I think when I was younger, I used to think, must be nice. I can't stand that phrase now, but I'm like, I think when I was younger, before I had much experience, when I saw somebody super successful and just good at everything, in the back of my mind, it was kind of a, wow, that must be nice. But then with experience, I've learned some of those people came from under a bridge, but it was their resilience that got them where they are. And so really, I'm like, wow, okay. It's not, you don't bottle stuff up. You don't totally ignore stuff. You actually deal with it. And that's, so just watching people that have had a hard life, or maybe even not so hard, but they just make the best of it.
Yeah.
And so, and I can use some people as examples, but it's so hard because everybody has a story. You don't think there's any certain person that I learn from. My siblings, looking at everybody and how different everybody is.
Well, I'm curious, if you could go back and talk to your younger self, what kind of advice would you give yourself with regard to resilience, but anything else as well?
Don't be so scared of everything, and don't worry about what people think, because you can't really change what people think. All you can do is change yourself. And I try to tell my daughter, I try to tell Michaela this a lot. There's so many things that, this is something I had told her the other day. She was really worried about, they had recently kicked out a roommate. Really nervous about it because she didn't want to hurt her roommate. But their reasons for doing it were because the roommate was making life uncomfortable for their son. I mean, he's a baby. It's not like he knew, but she was doing certain things that they weren't okay with. And she's like, I don't know how to approach this. I don't know how to, I just don't know how to do it. And so I was telling her, I said, I was a young mom. And in the back of my mind, I always thought everybody else knew better than I did, and so whatever they were saying must be right. And I didn't have enough confidence in myself to just stick up for myself. And I try not to regret a whole lot because it doesn't really change anything. But one of my biggest regrets was not like standing up for her or myself when I should have. And so I tell her, I'm like, do it now, be embarrassed, maybe even say the wrong thing, but you're going to be proud of yourself for doing it no matter what. You're going to be proud that you stood up for your son later on. So I think I would tell myself the same thing. Like, just stand up for yourself. Just stand up for the people around you, even if you're scared.
That sounds fantastic. I'm really happy for Michaela as well, because she has an advocate, somebody who can give her some advice and support her through those things. It seems like fantastic advice. How important would it have been to you as a kid to have somebody who you trusted, and when they give you advice, you're like, oh, I should listen to this person? Did you feel like you had anybody like that when you were younger?
I feel like when I was younger, I had people tell me to do things. I think a lot of the reasons why I ignored it when I was younger is because I felt like somebody was telling me what to do, instead of like approaching it as, hey, when I went through this situation, this is what I did. And it went well, or it didn't,
Yeah.
And I've realized now I really take that in a lot better. And so I attempt to tell my story, like, hey, I did this and it worked out horribly, or I did this and it worked out great. That might apply to your situation. Take it or leave it, And so I think I was, and I still be pretty stubborn. When people tell me what to do, I tend to be like, well, I'm going to try the opposite because I don't get told what to do. But if somebody's like, hey, I went through something similar and this is what I tried, then it seems to work. It's somewhat of a manipulation, but I'm like, well, hey, that manipulation works on me. So, yeah.
Well, I get it. Like, I try really hard not to tell my kids what to do. When it seems like a problem that they need to figure out, I try not to tell them what to do. And I will say, sometimes when you're in that situation, this might help. I just start it with sometimes. And also I'm not attached to whether they follow my advice or not. But I can tell that they're listening and they're like, I'll consider that, instead of I'm going to do what I want because you're not the boss of me, because I'm not posturing as a boss. That's interesting because I also don't feel like I had an idol or a role model that I looked up to when I was a kid. One of the things I learned, it didn't feel like there were many people that I could trust, and similarly, it felt like people were commanding me, and I just wasn't interested in that, and so I became pretty skeptical of people. I just didn't trust people until they showed me that I could trust them. Is skepticism important for you? How often do you use skepticism?
I think it's a necessity, but I also think people can be too skeptical. I would say definitely in my daily life, I've learned that skepticism actually could be the difference of life and death in some situation. And so at work, in the ER, if I ask somebody some basic questions, we're supposed to trust our patients. And in most of the time, I do. But if we're asking something and the picture is not matching up with the answers, you can miss like the correct treatment. So you somewhat have to be skeptical about if the person's telling you the truth. Like, did they take medication? Did they take drugs? Did they, do they actually eat well day to day? So you have to question things and compare it to the picture you're seeing. I try not to be too skeptical if it doesn't make a difference, though.
Makes sense. Yeah, if it sounds like at your work, you're applying skepticism in the sense, if I can paraphrase, that you're like trusting people, but you're also verifying, because the consequences could be life or death. Like there could be some drug interactions that are really negative or something like that.
And honestly, there's a lot of scammers in the world too. And
have you ever been duped like that?
Oh my gosh, I am a sucker sometimes. A couple weeks ago, it's so embarrassing to even tell this story, but I was pulling off of an exit and there was a car pulled off to the side, and I'm like, I should probably stop. Don't do it, Heather, don't do it, don't stop. And I'm like, whatever, I never stop. So I stopped. Do you guys need some help? And I looked at the situation. I was close enough to town that there's people around, there's people outside. And I got lectured after this because I'm a crime junkie, and I got lectured that I could have gotten kidnapped. But I stopped. Some dude comes up to the car. My family, we're traveling from such and such to such and such. We're out of gas. We don't have this. The gas station's literally walking distance. But I was like, I've been there. I was a single mom. We traveled from one place to another, and if I would have just had one person help out a little bit, it would have helped. But in the back of my mind, I always figured it out. Anyways, so I'm like, well, I'm in a position I can help.
Yeah.
Do you have cash? And I'm like, oh, red flag. I was like, I don't have cash, but I can meet you at the gas station. You don't have cash? Nope, but I can meet you at the gas station. It's right there. And he was like, I have a ring, or he had a ring in his finger. And I was like, I don't need that. I'll just meet you at the gas station. Keeps pushing this ring. And then I was like, well, I'm driving down there. You can follow me if you want to. We go down to the gas station, and I filled up his tank. And then, do you have any money for food? And I was like, oh my God.
No.
He was like, I have this ring. And he hands me this ring, and I was like, I'm no jeweler or anything. But
that doesn't look super valuable.
That does look super valuable. And I was like, oh my gosh, but if somebody's this desperate, so I'm like, I'll give you a little bit of money. I go inside, whatever. Most places don't give you much cash back or whatever, And so I asked for some cash back. I went back out there, gave it to him. I kind of started to just kind of be rude afterwards because I'm like, don't ask for anything else. Literally, you don't know my question. I'm giving you money. Be happy. And he did push for more, you know, and that's when I'm like, why did I just do this?
When did you figure out it was a scam?
Oh, probably before he offered. Well, I think as soon as I heard him say cash, honestly, as soon as I heard him say that, I'm like, oh God, but I already told him to meet me at the gas. So I get in my car and I Google, what did I say? Man offering ring for cash or something like that.
Yeah.
First thing that pops up. Man driving a nice such and such car, offering fake jewelry, wearing nice looking, wearing nice looking shoes, name brand shoes, going from town to town asking for money because he says he's like traveling from this place to this place. I was like, oh, literally exactly what happened. I was like, oh my God.
No.
Yeah. But I was like, whatever. Maybe it'll get him out of town. I don't know. So
yeah. There you go. Huh. You know, that as you say that, I feel like that exact thing has happened to me. I don't remember where, but I remember it was somebody saying, I'm stuck here. I need some cash for gas. And I was like, you know what? I can't do that, but I can give you a ride to the gas station. And they were like, no. And then I was like, I gave the guy some money and they were like, just give me your phone number and I'll call you when I get some money and I'll pay you back. And I was like, okay. And then I think I gave him $20 or something, and I felt kind of dumb afterwards because I felt like I knew it was a scam the whole time.
yeah.
And then I gave the guy some money anyway, and you know, of course, he never called me back. I felt duped. Yeah, so you're not alone. Have you ever really kind of sat down and put any time into thinking about what your most important values are, and then whether you have or not? What do you think they are?
I have a lot. And would love to say my job made me think about it, blah, blah, blah. But honestly, being a parent, to me, I'm like, one of these days I won't be here. What do I want people to remember about me? You know, what do I want? What do I want people to remember about me? And there's been so many times where somewhat unintentionally, I do something very selfish for myself. And I don't realize how selfish it was until later. And then I feel bad. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, is that who I am? Is that the type of person I want to be? And so I've really had to think about it. And sometimes I actually like have to remind myself, if today was your last day here, is that how you really want somebody to remember you? You know, and so to me, one of my biggest values is just integrity, because to me, I think it has the biggest impact on myself and then everybody around me, you know, having integrity, doing the right thing. And whatever you think is the right thing too, because there's so many people can tell you what it is, but really doing what you feel is right. Sometimes that gets skewed because, I mean, getting raised like in an LDS church, there were great things and there were not so great things. And when I've talked to, like, I don't know, a counselor and different people like that, one thing that I've actually had multiple people ask me, were you raised Mormon?
Huh.
Why? You feel guilt, like you take on a lot. It seems like you feel guilty about a lot of things. Oh, wow. Okay. And they're like, really? Do you try to do your best? Do you try to, you know, that sounds important to you? Do you try to do all of this? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, and stop feeling so guilty that you don't follow those rules. Like, you know? And so I try to remind myself, integrity is just doing what you feel is right.
How do you decide what's right?
Yeah. There's this saying, and I don't even know if I can remember it exactly, because it's like, is it true? Is it needed? Is it going to hurt somebody or something like that? And that might, I'm sure anybody listening, or maybe even it's like when you say something, is it true? Is it necessary? And is it going to make a difference? I attempt to apply those to things I'm doing as well. I think like, is it necessary is one of the biggest things, because something can be right, but maybe isn't totally necessary. So then it is right. Like, if somebody asks me, hey, does my hair look great? There's a big difference in if they're going out or if they're staying home. Because if they're staying home, I'd be like, oh, it looks amazing. Total lie. But
yeah,
doesn't make a difference. Like, yeah, it made a huge difference. It made them feel better. But then if they decided to go out and I just lied to them, I did not do them a huge favor. So I try to think about those things. And I feel like most people have a gut instinct of what's right and wrong. And I try to follow my gut. It's something I'm still learning to listen to gut,
Well, that makes a lot of sense. Actually, I really liked that, what you said. I'll have to ask you more about it some other time to get more details, because it feels like it's like a real easy rule of thumb that you could use and refer to. It also sounds like, you told me a little bit about a couple other of your values, which were honesty, and care about well-being of yourself and other people. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Okay. Well, is there anything else that you wanted to chat about before we wrap this up?
No, I think I'm good. I mean, yeah, of course, if we had a lot of time, I would continue forever. I think, honestly, it's been a great conversation, even though it's all been about me, which I'm not used
to. Hi. What is your favorite drink?
My favorite drink?
And food.
I would say my favorite drink is like a lime cucumber sugary drink that I make during the summer. It has lime and cucumber in it. Oh yeah, and food. My favorite food is, I would say one of my favorite foods is cantaloupe.
Okay.
Anything else?
A grizzly bear or a Wizard of Oz?
Wait, say that one more time.
Are you a grizzly bear or a Wizard of Oz?
I would say more of a Wizard of Oz.
Okay. What is it like to be with someone when they die in the ER?
There's a lot of different situations. I would say it depends on if it is expected or if it's not expected, and it can be very emotional sometimes for the families. But I think for the most part, it is then everybody's moving super fast because we have to try to save them. So everybody's moving super fast. And then when we realize that they aren't going to live, everything kind of slows down. Everybody stops. They stop worrying so much. We start talking to the family about what to expect next. We start telling them what might happen with the body when it dies, I guess. And then it really slows down and the person passes away. It can be very sad. The family can get very sad. That's about it, really. There's not really a whole lot to it. For me, at first, depending on what it is, let's say a car accident, it's very, very fast paced. There's things that we have to do. We have to hurry up and get an IV on that person. So like a little tube in their vein in case they need medicine. And then we have to try to get a tube in their throat if we can. Sometimes we give CPR, so it's, very, very fast paced. There's not a whole lot of emotional thinking when it comes to that part because there's just a lot of tasks. When it gets to the point where you realize the person's not going to make it, everything kind of slows down, and the emotions can be anywhere from, sadly, kind of a relief. Like if the person had a horrible life, or if they were in pain, or if they were ready, then it's kind of a, hey, this person knows that we tried, or whatever. If that's, we tried, the family knows we tried. So now it's just time to clean everything up. And so in some cases, it's not super emotional. But then if it's somebody that is very unexpected, it can get very, sometimes you got to step outside. Sometimes it makes me want to go home and hug my family and not talk about much. So it can get a little bit emotional, but, knowing that we did our best is kind of all you can do. And then I let go of it. All right. Well, thanks for talking to me.
Daddy.
She's talking to you.
Hello.
You did a great job, Dell. Good job.
Yeah.
I hope you learned some things today about how everyday people can be amazing. If you enjoyed this and think someone else could benefit from seeing it, please send it to a friend. If you want to see more content about everyday amazing people or how to learn amazing life skills like skepticism and resilience, subscribe to the channel. If you want to get step-by-step instructions on how to improve your skepticism and resilience, or how to teach your kids, go to the Citizenz of Earth website and become a member. That's Citizenz with Z. It's our mission to enable measurable improvement and life satisfaction through a fun, accessible, science-based educational framework. Thanks for watching today. See you next time.